Well, the injury report for the Chiefs game is out. Will Shipley obviously out amongst Tanner McKee. I think there's one other guy on there. But the big name on the injury report, the one that will not be making the trip to Kansas City, is tight end Dallas Goedert, who was used really heavily in week 1 against Dallas. And tight ends, I think, typically are a safety net for a quarterback after they go through their reads. And it's like, okay, well, I'll throw to the tight end. You saw that a lot in week 1. Dallas Goedert is one of the better tight ends in football. He's not, I think, an elite tight end, but he's pretty damn good. He's never going to reach the level of like a Zach Ertz, but he's really good. But this is an area, I think, that is a cause for concern for the Birds. And it was something that I talked about leading up to the draft. And it's something that they didn't address in the draft, and they didn't address it really in free agency. Not that I was looking for them to address it in free agency. I was really looking for them to address it in the draft, but it's that future tight end. Because it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the Birds and with Dallas Goedert, considering the fact that he is never healthy. This is typical for him. I think the only season that he has played all 16 games was his second year. And hit thumbs down for that, because I should have done research before doing this video, but I didn't. But the fact that his style of play is so demanding, I think back to when Zach Ertz was in an Eagles uniform, and he would routinely get ripped by the fan base for no yak Zach. That's something that we all heard. No yak Zach. He catches the ball, he goes down. Well, that way of play is going to end up getting Zach Ertz like a 15-year career in the NFL. You forget he was drafted in, I think, 2012. I think it was the Lane Johnson year. So he's already at a 13-year NFL career, still getting it done in Washington. I'd love to have him back, but obviously Washington, you'd figure, will be contending this year. So they're not going to be trading him, as my dog decided. My dog, by the way, has been silent this entire time. And as soon as I hit the record button, that's when he decided to start prancing around. Oh, let me look at, we got water over? Yeah, okay, we'll drink some water. Let me start smashing into the couch. He's a whore for the camera. But Zach Ertz is still getting it done. I don't think he's at an elite level tight end. I think obviously his best days are behind him. But the fact that he wasn't looking for contact, wasn't looking to lower the shoulder and run a guy over, is why he's going to have such a long career. And I think a career that might end up in Cannes. Dallas Goedert was the exact opposite. Dallas Goedert catches the ball, and he's fighting for that extra yard. He's lowering his shoulder. He's trying to run guys over. And while it's admirable, don't get me wrong, I love it, you're seeing the impact of it. The Eagles did not, they haven't signed him to an extension. It sounds like they had him on the trade block, and then they didn't address him in the draft. I have a problem going into the rest of really the season, but also I have a problem with going into next season, where your number one tight end is projected to be Grant Calcaterra, a guy who retired from football because of concussions, until eventually the bug got him and he came back. I think Grant Calcaterra could be a nice number 2 tight end, and that's primarily what he's been until he's being thrust into the role of the number 1 tight end because of the Goedert injury. But I don't like a guy that already has head issues, and now he's going to project to be your number 1 tight end. I also want to add that historically speaking, tight ends in their rookie year do not produce. The Brock Bowers of the world, the Sam Laportas, they don't produce. If you go and you look at the Gronks, the Ertz, the Goederts, look at some of the tight ends that were drafted highly in the draft, and you look at their first year, they don't really break out until year 2 or 3. So the Eagles are positioning themselves a lot like the Phillies are positioning themselves with JT Realmuto, where they're in between a little bit of a rock and a hard place. You can go through some growing pains if you let the guy go, whether it be Goedert or for the Phillies Realmuto. You go for some growing pains for the quote-unquote the future. With the Eagles, it would be Grant Calcaterra, and with the Phillies, it would be Rafael Marchand. But is that doing your team a disservice when that person is counted on fairly regularly in the offense? And I think it's actually a pretty decent comparison, now that I throw it out there, of Goedert and Realmuto, because I feel like their impact on the team is pretty equal in terms of their offensive output. They're not the guy, but when they come up to bat, you're not going to the bathroom. You're not shocked when they catch a 20-yard pass and they have a 6th catch for, 60, 70-yard performance and a touchdown. You're not surprised by that. So both teams have positioned themselves in a little bit of a tough spot where what do? Do you go out and trade for another tight end? Like, I would love for the Birds to take a flyer on Kyle Hamilton. Not Kyle Hamilton. Jeez, hit thumbs down for that. Kyle Pitts. He's a guy that has been in Atlanta. He did okay his first year. I don't think he's ever quite been used properly, but for all these trades that Howie does, and for the lauding that the fan base gives him for getting Sam Howell of all people, like, I would love to see him take a flyer on a Kyle Pitts and see if maybe you can resurrect his career. And I think that's the more realistic approach for the Birds next season is you let Goedert walk and you look for that reclamation project maybe, and then you draft a future tight end. But to me, this is frustrating because it's already week 2 and he's already banged up. You can't count on the guy to play for 16 games at this point, or 17 games. So I'm just kind of annoyed, but not overly surprised about it. Do I think the Eagles win? Absolutely. I don't think this is going to be a contest. I think the Chiefs are cooked. Like, I think the Eagles broke the Chiefs. I mean, you saw week 1, they didn't look good at all. Xavier Worthy will be healthy-ish. Rashee Rice obviously is out. Travis Kelce is way past his prime. Pat Mahomes can only do so much. That offensive line had to trade away Joe Thuney in the offseason and replace him. Jalen Carter is going to be motivated. The cornerback situation with the Chiefs is brutal. A.J. Brown is a lock for 100 and a touchdown. This was the game where, and we saw it last year, I think, with Devontae Smith, where, like, he didn't really have a pass. So next week it was like all Devontae Smith all the time. And that's the beautiful thing about the Eagles wide receivers is I know it's coming and you know it's coming. And if you don't think the Chiefs know it's coming, you're kidding yourself. They know it's coming and they cannot stop it. The Chiefs won't be able to stop the passing attack. And I'm just going on what I watched 6 months ago in the Super Bowl when the Chiefs couldn't stop the passing attack, game. It will be interesting to see what happens with Saquon Barkley, though, because I will give the Chiefs a little bit of credit. They were the only team to really bottle up Saquon Barkley. But they also gave up 40 points and watched the starters get pulled. So I'm not concerned about this game in the slightest. I think the Birds absolutely roll to 2-0. I think the Chiefs end up being 0-2. I think the elite teams in the AFC are the Ravens and the Bills. We saw them in week 1. So I think the Eagles roll even without Dallas Goedert. But immediately when he popped up on the injury report, I thought, oh, shocking. Now's the part of the video where I ask you guys to subscribe. Subscribing is cool. People do it, and they're like, man, I had so much fun hitting that subscribe button. Please, God, please, and seriously, like, please. My dog needs to eat. Anyway, liking, commenting, disliking, whatever you guys want. Go Birds.